achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming UFC 170 event, which will take place on February 22nd from Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. In the main event, we have the women's bantamweight champion, Ronda Rousey, defending her title against fellow Olympian Sara McMann. We also have Daniel Cormier taking on late injury replacement Patrick Cummins. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions for this card, and all of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now I'm coming off a fantastic UFC Fight Night 36 in which I went 9-3 overall, and the 3 fights I lost. The opening 2 fights tonight, which I had said, don't put a lot of stock into these picks, don't bet on them, or at least if you bet on them, make them add-ons to other bets you already have. And of course, the Jacare Souza win over Francis Carmont. Francis Carmont just did not perform the way I expected him to. And, Jacare is a beast nonetheless. Either way, I had a great night picking fights and a huge financial night. Personally, I banked a fair chunk of cash, and I'll tell you this much, the bet packs paid out at the rates I said at over $2,100, and they were fantastic. The prop bets hit, my top 4 value plays hit, my top 8 confidence picks hit. So of 12 fights, the first 8 I said all came through. The only one I got that was a little bit lower on the card was, it's escaping me right now, but nonetheless, only of my bottom 4 plays, I lost 3 of them, but that's the bottom 4. They're at the bottom because that's the least confidence I have, including Carmont at the very bottom. Also, my theory about at least one upset in the first 2 fights tonight came through against Ildemar Alcantara. I didn't pick him, unfortunately. I probably should have based on my own thought process, and I certainly will looking at it here. He came through with the upset victory. Nonetheless, had a fantastic day, big payouts with my bet packs. Hopefully keep it going at this event, UFC 170. I've got some interesting picks ahead of me coming up for this event, and it's time to get to them. Let's go. First prediction of the night. Our opening fight of the night takes place in the UFC's welterweight division as Robert Whittaker, Ultimate Fighter Smash's winner, 12-3-0, battles Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 8-1-0. Now, coming into this fight, Whittaker's coming off a split decision loss against Court McGee, his first loss in the UFC, while Thompson had a return to form knockout of Chris Clements. Now, Thompson's going to have 1.5 inches of reach in this fight, and his kicking game will extend that reach a little bit further, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now, Thompson has had a vaunting kickboxing career, incredible success as a kickboxer. He's a black belt both karate and as a kickboxing, and he has 4 wins by knockout as an MMA fighter. Whittaker's a black belt in karate as well, and he has 5 knockouts. So both guys have the ability. They're not big numbers, but compared to the number of fights they've had, certainly good percentages for their knockouts. Now, both guys have a high strikes landed per minute average. Both are over or very close to 4.5 strikes, with the edge going to Robert Whittaker just slightly. The difference is the massive advantage in strikes absorbed per minute, which favors Wonderboy Thompson, as he gets tagged at a rate of 2.88 strikes per minute, while Whittaker at 4.33, and that's not a good trade-off. You're giving up over 4 strikes per minute. That's not something you want to do against a talented striker like Thompson. Now, one thing, though, keep in mind, that number is a product of Whittaker facing Court McGee. He was outlanded 99-49. Which tells us he did get hit a lot, and Court McGee does that to a lot of guys. Now, Whittaker's very unorthodox striking style. He likes to flash that jab, hangs his lead hand a little bit low for my liking, but he does have very fast hands that help him make up for it. In his last fight against Court McGee, he was waiting on McGee to engage a little bit before returning fire. I think that cost him a couple of occasions. Now, with Thompson, he's got a very sideways stance, that karate-esque. He throws a variety of kicks, likes those front leg techniques. He likes to go to the body as well with shots, and he'll go high after he sets it up by going to the body, which can be a very devastating technique if he lands it. In the Clements fight, he caught him with a quick combination and had that big right hand that eventually finished the fight, so his hands are equally as dangerous if he unloads with them. Now, McGee had success landing kicks against Robert Whittaker, and that's something to keep in mind. And he also hurt Whittaker with his hands, so certainly he is vulnerable. For a guy like Stephen Thompson who's going to throw a lot of kicks and going to come in with combinations. Both guys generally in fights are forced to be multi-focused, defending the takedowns while setting up their strikes and landing. That shouldn't be an issue here. I don't think either man is really going to look to use a wrestling-based approach. And we look at, in past fights, when Thompson lost to Matt Brown, he got taken down 5 times in 13 attempts. And you look at when Whittaker fought Brad Scott, Court McGee, and Colton Smith, they had to combine 19 attempts to take him down, which is a lot of numbers and a lot of defended takedowns. He only got taken down twice. Thompson is a BJJ blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yes, BJJ blue belt. More likely of the two to look for takedowns as far as I'm concerned. He used a lot of takedowns against, or a couple takedowns against Chris Cummins, a lot of clinch fighting against Noshan Burrell, which he could look to do here and maybe tie up Whittaker and try and wear him out a little bit. But also we saw that had some impact on Thompson's cardio as well. Whittaker's pretty strong, pretty hard to take down, so I would think Thompson will look to just try and exchange shot for shot with him and outstrike him. And as the cardio of Thompson's a little bit of a question mark, especially if this fight goes long. I think Whittaker's going to have learned some things in the McGee fight, and that certainly was a good performance and a building experience, but he certainly got outworked and outpointed. The key in this fight is going to be distance management. Thompson's going to try and keep this at kicking range, and Whittaker wants to be at boxing range. I don't think he's going to be able to get in there without getting tagged with some good shots. Thompson needs to limit the strikes landed, which will be a big part of his success. He'll use those kicks, again, as I said, to manage the distance and the jabs. And my prediction is Stephen Thompson to defeat Robert Whittaker by decision. Remaining in the UFC's 170-pound division, the number 15 ranked Mike Quicksand Pyle, 25-9-1, takes on 16-8 TJ Waldburger. Now Pyle, he's 38 years of age, and he had a 4-fight winning streak snapped in his last fight in a pretty profound fashion when Matt Brown knocked him out. Is it going to be difficult for Pyle to get motivated, considering that could have been his last chance to really climb up the ladder? We'll see, I guess, but it's something to keep in mind here. Now, Waldburger, he's coming off an incredibly brutal knockout at the hands of Adlan Amagov, and that was certainly devastating to see. And, Pyle's knockout equally as bad against Mike Brown, both very quick, but Waldburger's was tough. That was a hard one to watch. Now, both fighters are based in grappling. Pyle's a BJJ brown belt with 16 wins by submission. He averages about 2 takedowns per fight at 33% completion rate. He had 5 takedowns against John Hathaway and really opened some eyes with his ability to control Hathaway on the mat. We also took down Rory MacDonald on 2 occasions. And he has 16 submission wins, as I said, overall, so he's very capable on the mat. Big number for Pyle, 69% takedown defense, very crafty and good at defending takedowns, but he's had trouble with power wrestlers. Rick Story put him on his back 3 times, and I felt won that fight against Pyle. Ellenberger took him down twice before scoring the TKO, and Jake Shields earlier in his career did submit him. Now, he's been submitted 4 times in his career. Jake Shields, I just mentioned. Brock Larson and Matt Horowitz also got him earlier in his career, so certainly he is vulnerable on the mat, but it's been a little while since he has been tapped out. Waldburger, though, 13-0 in fights ended by submission. He's a BJJ brown belt, very aggressive grappler. His last 3 UFC wins have all come by tap out. He's very aggressive with his transitions. He likes to chain submissions together. He'll target arms, necks, legs. Whatever he gets the opportunity to attack, he will look to capitalize on it and go for it. Waldburger averages 3.96 takedowns at 55%, so very impressive numbers. Even more impressive, 5.94 subs per fight. So this guy puts up a lot of submission attempts, and hopefully one of them sticks. He usually only needs one opportunity, but he'll just keep going until he gets one to land. Very impressive rate of submissions. 6 takedowns against Danny Mitchell in a decision win, so he was able to win a fight in his UFC debut, I believe it was, without scoring the submission. But in his career, the guy is 3-8 when fights don't end by submission in his favor. That's a pretty weak record if you can't tap an opponent out. He has 11 first-round submissions, just 2 second-round submissions, and he's 4-3 in fights overall that go outside of the first round. So things don't look nearly as promising for TJ once the first 5 minutes has passed. Now, 3 of Pyle's 4 sub-losses were inside the first round, which tells me he's vulnerable to getting caught, but he hasn't been submitted since 2009. That's 11 fights that have passed, so the guy is a veteran fighter. He's certainly tightened up his grappling and submission defense. Both guys are capable strikers, but knockout prone. Pyle's been knocked out 4 times, but mostly on the mat. Jake Ellenberger knocked him out on the mat, and Rory MacDonald knocked him out on the mat. We saw Brown and Rory Markham also KO him in under a minute, so they did it very quickly. That's not exactly Waldburger's style as far as hands are concerned. Now, TJ, this is the big issue. TJ's been knocked out 6 times, and it's very concerning for a young man to be fighting this early in his career to have 6 knockouts on his ledger. Adlan Amagov knocked him out. Johnny Hendricks knocked him out. And those are 2 big hitters. But then you look at the other guys, Josh Neer, Ricardo Funch, and Pete Spratt. Not exactly, fireball throwers like Hendricks and Amagov, but nonetheless, Waldburger has been stopped on multiple occasions. Both guys have chin issues, but Pyle has shown the capacity to exploit the striking situation. Should be able to exploit the chin issues of Waldburger. I don't see Waldburger catching Pyle on the feet and knocking him out. Pyle, 5 wins by knockout. 3 of his last 4 have come by stoppage, including the aforementioned Ricardo Funch and Josh Neer, and he also stopped James Head. He has a beautiful right cross, which he can land and catch an opponent coming in, and he works well in close and in the clinch. Pyle needs to survive the early attack, which I expect to see Waldburger throw at him. TJ was very aggressive on the mat early against Brian Ebersol, but he couldn't finish, slowed in that fight, and lost the decision, spending most of the time on his back. Pyle is crafty enough and a veteran fighter. I expect him to defend the early submission attempts, work his striking, get himself in a position to win, and my prediction is Mike Pyle to defeat TJ Waldburger by TKO. Remaining in the welterweight division, number 4 ranked Rory Aries MacDonald, 15-2-0, battles number 6 ranked 18-5-0 Demian Maia, former middleweight title contender. Now Rory's coming off the second loss of his career. He had won 5 in a row after his first defeat, so we'll see how he responds. Maia's coming off his first defeat at middleweight. Prior to that, he had 3 wins over Dong Young Kim, Rick Story, and John Fitch. So both these guys took a major step back in their pursuits of a title shot and realize a win here is imperative to get back on track. Now Maia's a 4th degree BJJ black belt. MacDonald also BJJ black belt, but I think Maia is a vastly superior submission fighter in comparison to his Canadian counterpart. Now Rory, his 2 defeats in his career have come against heavy-handed opponents in Carlos Condit and Robbie Lawler in fights that were stopped in Condit's case, or Lawler, he was able to turn around by landing big shots against Rory. Rory, he's never faced, though, a grappler on Demian Maia's level. That's something to keep in mind. Maia, 9 wins by submission, including tapping out pretty good grapplers in Rick Story and Chael Sonnen. 6 total submissions in the UFC, multiple grappling-based decisions as well, including his victory over John Fitch. Maia averages 3.14 takedowns at 33%, and he's showed a return focus to grappling since cutting down to welterweight. His takedown of preference, either a single leg in space, he'll get on it and just eventually work his man to the mat, or he'll get in for a deep double leg along the cage and either pursue the takedown or try and get behind his opponent, rotate to his back, and go from there. He really can do a lot of damage with that body triangle, at least controls opponent and works submissions from there. He's very aggressive on the mat, as he should be. He works very hard. He really smothers his opponents. We saw that in the John Fitch fight. Now, Rory was taken down by Mike Pyle on 2 occasions. The first one was a single leg attack. The second one was along the cage, very similar to what he'll experience against Demian Maia. But that was a little bit ago, and Rory certainly improved since then. Maia will pull guard, but I would not suggest that against Rory MacDonald because he has solid ground and pound. You do not want to spend too much time on your back against a heavy hitter like MacDonald on the mat. Now Rory, very solid wrestling, 6 wins by submission, 1 in the UFC. He has some solid ground and pound victories versus Pyle and Shane Mills. He averages 3.15 takedowns at a 58% completion rate, which is very respectable. Rory, he should have, but for me, he should have the striking advantage here, and he'll need to maintain distance like he did against Jake Ellenberg, and just really forego the grappling game against Demian Maia and focus on that one dimension. Ellenberger, for my money, got stuck at the end of the jab, and he really failed to pull the trigger. And that's what cost him, and that's what Maia has to avoid to do, and that's what Rory has to maintain in this fight. Rory throws a lot of fakes and feints, uses a lot of movement. He's a very calculated striker. And that can really, throw guys off as they're anticipating him attacking and not sure when they're going to go, and that can be a major issue. But Lawler had a lot of success versus Rory using pressure. He kept kept Rory moving backwards, and he kept coming forwards, and that caused MacDonald some major issues. And for me, pressure can overcome a calculated style, force him to really fight on the, react and fight, and that's not a good way to do it for a guy who likes to think things out. Maia's striking is serviceable, but isn't great. He needs, just as much as Rory needs to keep this fight standing, Demian Maia needs to keep this fight on the mat. Rory has hurt guys in the feet, but he's never really knocked anybody out with one punch, so keep that in mind. But for me, Maia simply can't hesitate. He must engage, and he must keep coming forward like he's been doing. He showed his cardio can hold up against John Fitch in a grappling-based fight, and that's what he needs to look for here. Maia did lose to Jake Shields because he struggled with Shields' top game, but Rory is not the grappler Jake Shields is. A lot of people are still really high on Rory MacDonald. The guy's a fantastic fighter, but he's not the second coming of George St. Pierre just yet. He's a very good striker. He's a very good ground fighter. He's very strong in all areas. But the thing is, Demian Maia is a specialist. He's a ground specialist. Rory has looked good versus lower competition, like an old Mike Guyman, very one-dimensional Che Mills, an old BJ Penn, and undersized Nate Diaz. But for my money, I really like the way Demian Maia attacks the ground game. I see some holes in Rory's grappling defense, even though people haven't wanted to really admit it. Rory's very capable and could very well walk away with this, but I really like what Demian Maia brings to the table. So my prediction is Demian Maia to defeat Rory MacDonald by decision. In our co-main event of the evening, we move to the light heavyweight division as Daniel D.C. Cormier, 13-0, former heavyweight, makes his light heavyweight debut against late injury replacement Patrick Durkin Cummins with a record of 4-0. Now, as I said, this is Cormier's debut at 205 pounds, and he's fighting a late notice replacement, so certainly a couple of issues there that could arise with Cormier's first fight. Cormier, though, he wanted to fight after Rashad Evans pulled out. He did not want to sit idle for a couple more months at this division, probably because he feels he's in a good place with his new weight cut. This is a high-risk fight for Daniel Cormier because he really has nothing to gain but, I guess, experience at 205 and everything to lose against a relative unknown in Patrick Cummins. Physically, Cummins will be 2 inches taller, and he has fought at 205 pounds before on 4 occasions, so he's used to fighting at this weight class. Daniel Cormier is not. For Cummins, this is a major step up in competition. He said only 4 pro fights, but again, he's fighting with nothing to lose. He's not expected to win, so certainly that takes a lot of pressure off a fighter and allows him to just go out and do what he can do. As I said, 4 4 pro wins, 2 by knockout, 2 by submission, all first round victories, including his pro debut at a Strikeforce event. I can't remember exactly. It was Babalu versus Henderson, where he was on one of the preliminary bouts. For the most part, though, he's faced lower-level competition. His 4 opponents, a combined record of 10 wins and 20 losses, which is not an overly good thing for a young fighter to be stepping up and facing a guy like Daniel Cormier, who has more wins than the last 4 guys he's faced combined. Cummins comes from a wrestling background. He's a walk-on at Penn State, All-American Division I honor, so very capable wrestler. He has a little bit of a background with Cormier. He claims to have broken him in practice. Sara McMann actually went on record and says, no, it was the coaches that broke him, and just Cummins was part of the process. Regardless, wrestling practice and an MMA fight are 2 things entirely different. Cormier is the experienced fighter, and the striking involved, that's something Cummins never had to deal with before, as far as I've seen. He has Cormier, very fast hands, knockout power, 5 in total. Only 1, though, versus top level competition in Bigfoot Silva. Cormier, Olympic wrestler, great wrestling, either to keep the fight standing if he wants to keep it there, or take it down and control the position. I would expect he'll use it to put Cummins on his back and limit the chances of a lucky punch landing and really work the top control game like he did against Dion Staring. Cormier appears to be emotionally invested in this fight. It's probably just hype for the fight considering there's limited appeal and limited time to get it going. It's not the strongest of cards. So I think that little session there with Cormier and Cummins on that show, I think that was a little bit more build than it was anything else. Cormier's cardio at 205 could be an issue. Speed advantage that he used to have at heavyweight, I would expect will be gone. But again, against a low-level opponent, that's probably not going to be a big, problem. Will he slow down in this fight? That could be an issue if the fight goes long enough to test it. Cormier is a heavy clinch fighter. He controlled opponents like Mir Nelson on the cage and on the floor. I expect to see a little bit of that in here. That can be a little bit grueling and test a guy at 205. As I said, he beat down Dion Staring, kept pouring it on, eventually broke him in that bout. I expect to see a little bit of that here as well. He needs to avoid underestimating his opponent, but he should be better everywhere, and that's what this comes down to. Only positive for him is it's a testing ground at 205 pounds to see how the cut goes and how his body reacts out facing top-level competition like Rashad Evans. Cormier and the UFC brass are probably seeing a silver lining here in that he's not going to get blown out of the barn because he gasses, and if things don't go well, he can always go back up to heavyweight. Nonetheless, my prediction is Daniel Cormier to defeat Patrick Cummins by TKO. In the main event of the evening, we move to the UFC's women's bantamweight division as the champion, Rowdy Ronda Rousey, 8-0, battles the number 4 ranked fighter in the division, undefeated as well, 7-0, Sara McMann. Now, coming into this fight, Rousey's coming off a very quick turnaround. Only 2 months since her last bout. She says she's feeling good. She's ready to defend her title. Let's do it. Well, McMann, opposite situation, a 10-month layoff. So not quite a year, but she's been out of the cage for a little while. McMann, only 7 fights overall, and Rousey just has 8, but the bigger difference is much higher profile fights, much higher profile opponents for Ronda Rousey. But McMann has faced some decent named opponents. One question I have is, was Ronda too distracted coming to this bout based on her movies and new connections to Hollywood, just her increasing fame? Is she losing some of her focus for a fighter who's still working to round out her game and build upon her already strong judo and grappling skills? Another thing I look at is the UFC banking on Rousey to continue this push for women's fighting and build upon her? And are they giving McMann the shot at the title based on the situation? They want to get McMann in there because they recognize she's not nearly as marketable, but she's very dangerous, but she is maybe not at her best point as far as an MMA fighter is concerned. She's coming off a long layoff. She has limited experience. She's going to eventually get the shot. Let's give it to her now and let's see if Ronda can take her out and take her out of the equation, because I think they want to keep Ronda Rousey in a position to continue marketing, because Dana White said that she's our self-proclaimed biggest superstar, or at least Dana has proclaimed that as well. Now, Rousey, a 2008 bronze medalist in judo, McMann, 2004 silver medalist in wrestling, both at the Olympics, so very good grappling backgrounds and credentials, and it'll be very interesting to see how these ladies line up. Rousey, all 8 of her wins by submission. That's well documented. First time out of the first round versus Miesha Tate, and she did very well over 3 rounds for the most part. McMann, though, 1 win by knockout, 3 by sub, 3 by decision. She's got some interesting names coming up. That win over Sheila Gaff. Also taking out Hitomi Akano, Shayna Baszler, and Tanya Evander. So she has a couple of solid names on her short resume. Now, McMann has experienced fighting a veteran MMA fighter with a judo background, a very good judo player in Hitomi Akano. Now, in that fight, yes, Akano was at the end of her career, and that's something to keep in mind, but certainly it's good experience for Sara. McMann defended Akano's judo throws, and she used those throws to land immediate takedowns, so she knows what a judo throw feels like and how to counter it. She locked up a body slam and put Akano on the mat and went directly into side control every single time she tried to throw it. And something to keep in mind, that's an excellent position to neutralize arm triangle or arm bar attempts, and that's what she needs to do against a person like Ronda Rousey, who's going to be looking for those arm triangles. arm bars, my apologies. Now, she defended a lot of submission attempts against Akano off her back, showed a lot of strength, heavy top control, and did a really nice job from that position. Now, she had a significant size advantage. As I said, Akano was near the end, but still it was a good experience for McMann that she will certainly draw upon for this fight. Now, Rousey, we know what she's going to do. She's going to look for the clinch or the body lock. She has those unreal throws we saw in that last fight in most of her fights. Very strong hips. She can attack from the mount position where she throws that ground and pound and looks for her opponent to cover up with her arms and expose something for an arm bar, or she can work off the bottom. She's very strong off her back, can really rotate into a good position to attack, throw her hips around, and really attack those arms. Now, we did see Miesha Tate take Ronda down a couple of times, and she also reversed into top position as well, which is very impressive and shows that Ronda is far from perfect on the mat. We also saw Liz Carmouche take her back and nearly finish her with a rear naked choke, and that's something to consider as well if she gives up a bad position. Rousey, for me, she didn't defend the takedowns against Miesha Tate. She used the position to counter and throw her opponent for the throws. She showed those strong hips and those body lock positions and was able to reverse it. The question is, can she do it against an equally strong or an even stronger fighter who comes from a strong wrestling background like McMann? That's a major question coming into this fight. On the feet, Ronda landed some pretty decent strikes, but she also got tagged with some, and that's something to keep in mind if this fight stays vertical and if the grappling cancels each other out. McMahon's striking is still a work in progress, but she's been out for a while, and that could have improved, and that's something to consider here. Rousey, physically stronger fighter than Miesha Tate, it showed up. Again, that won't be the case here against Sara McMann. For me, she was breathing a little bit heavy. She says she wasn't gassed, but she was breathing heavy against Tate. And even though she was controlling the action, I wonder what the impact of grappling with someone who's very strong like McMann, is that going to slow her down and really push her cardio? McMann, for me, she has to keep it simple. Defend the throws, put Ronda on her back, keep her hand and head in the middle of Rousey's body, and work from side control to throw off that, to work that defensive game and allow her to go on the offense. She can't afford to get into too many scrambles. That's when she could get caught. She needs controlled aggression, but she needs to stay active to maintain the position. First time Rousey's really faced a talented grappler, like Liz Carmouche and Miesha Tate are good grapplers, not on Sara McMann's level. Rousey, I think she's going to struggle not having the control she was able to do against Tate and just do whatever she wanted and throw those suicide throws and come up with a good position. McMann is still green, but she has a base to grind out Ronda Rousey and build on what Miesha Tate did. Rousey was looking for subs in that fight instead of controlling the position, and she'll do that here again. That's going to cost her, and that's going to allow her to get stuck under Sara McMann early and often in this bout. This could be similar to the GSP Johnny Hendricks or John Jones Alexander Gustafsson, where it's tight and controversial. Nonetheless, I'm calling the upset in the first title change in the women's bantamweight division. My prediction is Sara McMann to defeat Ronda Rousey. I'll take McMann by decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 170. I fully anticipate those people that love to come on and bash the crap out of me when I pick upsets like I did with Jacques Racers. That's what it's all about. Just be respectful, state your points, explain why you think I'm wrong, because you're fully entitled to have that opinion. But again, we're all adults here, so let's do it properly and in a proper form, or else I'll just remove you from the ability to post on my website or post on my YouTube videos. Nonetheless, as always, thank you very much for listening. I really enjoy doing these videos and really enjoy hearing the feedback from you guys when it's positive or negative and just respectful. Hopefully you won some money at the last event. Hopefully we can cash in here. And yes, hopefully I can call a major upset like I just did. Actually, a couple upsets in the main card. Nonetheless, I think there's MMA almost every week for a number of weeks now, so it's going to be a very busy time. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.